Hello, my name is Larry Darnell, and I'm here to present this afternoon on a topic perhaps you've heard in the news before, called ransomware. Sounds pretty scary, I know. When your data is held hostage, what do? Do you have a plan in place? Have you thought about it ahead of time? Because if not, Liam Neeson is not coming to save your data. He's not going to try and get your data back for you. So you have to figure out some ways to do this yourself. You've probably seen it all over the news. Schools hit by ransomware, entire cities, dental offices. You notice that the ransomware attacks have doubled in 2019 alone. It is impacting all sorts of businesses and associations. You need to know what to do about that. And we have to start with, really, what is it? What is ransomware? Of course, we see here this screen, which is indicative of you have ransomware, and there's time left and money to pay, and all sorts of other scary things saying that you're going to lose your files forever. And unfortunately, that's very true. You would lose your files forever unless you do something about it now. So what is it? What can we do about it? Well, you hear the term ransom and you think, you gotta pay some money for something. Well, that's really what the people who have designed this thing to do, is they want to get you to pay money for it. Well, how do they do that? Let's get to the definition. Ransomware is a type of malicious software or malware designed to deny access to a computer system or data until ransom is paid. Ransomware typically spreads through phishing emails or by unknowingly visiting an infected website. This information comes via the U.S. Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency. Once again, just a type of malicious software. So it's a software that is downloaded to your computer. Oftentimes you don't know about it. It's not going to pop up and say, hey, I'm going to download this bad software, watch out. You look and you say, well, wait a minute, I have antivirus software, I have anti-malware software, I have all these different sorts of things that are supposed to be designed to protect me, but they don't seem to do it. Well, we could look at some statistics and numbers and see, but the biggest one that we see on this particular slide here is 50% of incidents of ransomware came from employees clicking on something they shouldn't have in emails. That right there should be the biggest warning sign, because every day somebody's using email somewhere, somehow, in some way. And the question is, do you trust the people you work with enough not to click on something they shouldn't, or click on a particular link in an email, or visit a website? Unfortunately, people are people, and they're going to do that. So if that's the case, they're exposing not only you, not only themselves, not only their family, but their entire company, their entire network, and everybody that's connected to them to ransomware. How do you get it? You're often exposed, as I said, by way of a bad email that comes in. It may be somebody you happen to know. It may be a former contact. It has information there, and you look at it and you say, well, I know that person. That seems okay. Or perhaps you were expecting a package and it has a FedEx or UPS ID with it, and you go to click on it thinking, oh, I'm going to get that. Let me check that out. And you click on that, and next thing you know, nothing happens. You go, well, I don't understand what's going on. What's happening here must be a busted email. Little did you know that you actually clicked on something that's ransomware, and it's begun to infect your computer behind the scenes. You don't notice it, you don't see it happening, but it is taking place. You can also get ransomware by visiting an infected website, or just by clicking on an infected advertisement on a normal website. And even today, of late, there are stories going around where companies are being infected by ransomware through third-party providers who have connectivity to you. So in one instance, a number of dentists had their computer systems taken over by ransomware because they used an IT services company. The IT services company was hit, and the ransomware spread out through all 400 different dental offices, crippling dental offices across Wisconsin, all because of one mistake somebody in an IT services company made. And it impacted all those businesses. This could happen to you. What really happens when you get ransomware? Well, obviously, one computer called patient zero, kind of a medical term, gets infected. And after that, it begins to spread. And it spreads out basically by all of the other computers that are connected to your network. Now, not necessarily all on the internet, although it will use the internet as well, but it also works peer-to-peer network. on your local network. So any number of people who are connected to your local network could also be impacted by this ransomware, and it continues to spread itself because it downloads onto your computer, it runs some software that encrypts the data that is in your files. And once that data is encrypted, it needs a key to be able to decrypt it. And you may ask yourself, well, encrypted, what does that even mean? Encryption just simply involves encoding data files. It's used mostly for security purposes. Basically, when you don't want other people to just have plain access to the files, you send them something that's encrypted and then send a key with it. Well, in this case, it's encrypting the files, and unfortunately, you don't have the key. Someone else holds the key. And as long as they hold the key, they're going to try to extort some ransom from you. It's a very secure and unique process that cannot be easily bypassed, and the hackers obviously use this particular process to their advantage. There are not many ways around decrypting the files unless they're just incompetent hackers who use some method that is easily cracked themselves, and most of them don't do that these days. Why doesn't antivirus, anti-malware protect me? I invest a lot of money in software and other things to be able to do that, but it doesn't protect me. Why doesn't it? Well, basically, antivirus and anti-malware software is a software solution. So it works after the fact. It notices something's happening after it's already taken place. And by that time, it's too late. Things have already been encrypted, and you're going to lose access to your files by the time your antivirus or anti-malware software solution notices that something's happening. Now, trust me, there are hardware solutions out there that do recognize those things as they're coming in and can block them and keep them from happening, but they happen to be very expensive and they're systemic type of devices. So not everybody's going to have those, and they're very hard to come by because of the expense that's involved with them. But basically, you open up something, you view this PDF and things are happening, and your antivirus or anti-malware software doesn't even know what's happening. Eventually it will catch up to it. It will mark that as, hey, something bad is happening to your computer. By that time, your entire network could be encrypted, and you never knew it to begin with. How do you know you have ransomware? Well, you saw the screen earlier that I showed you that announced it to the world that you have ransomware. That is the whole point behind ransomware, is to let you know that something bad has happened to your computer system. And now here's what you can do about it. Suddenly, if you just go and you look and your files are no longer readable by whatever program you're using, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, whatever it may be, it pops up and you will get that announcement that's saying your files are encrypted. Oh, and they're nice enough to be able to provide even a way that you can pay the ransom. They will explain Bitcoin to you in case you didn't know what Bitcoin meant. They will be happy to explain that to you. Unfortunately, it usually involves a very high-priced ransom that you really don't want to pay. So there are some things you can do about that. You've discovered ransomware. What do you do? How do you go about this? Well, we've seen this on 3 different occasions in the last 10 years. I've dealt with 3 different incantations of ransomware attacking our network. And each time we kind of did the same thing. I admit the second and third time it was a little easier process. First time it was very difficult to figure out what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to do it, because I didn't really have a plan in place for what happened. But you must immediately shut down all the computer systems and any network connected devices. I realize that that is problematic depending upon the number of people you're talking about, but unfortunately it's very necessary to be able to limit how big and bad the infection is going to be and how many files it's going to be able to encrypt in that process. Then you have to identify patient 0. Generally speaking, those files that have already been encrypted are owned by somebody, and the owner of those files is patient 0. So you go to that person's computer and you realize that they are the ones who had something happen to their computer, and now it's spread to everybody else. And you've got to eliminate that where it is. It will be helpful also to know what type of ransomware. There are all sorts of different types of ransomware out there that all have kind of innocent sounding names, or maybe bad sounding names like WannaCry, because I guess that's what it makes you want to do when you get it. You want to cry, but trying to figure out which type of ransomware you have is very helpful to figure out what the next step in the process would be as well. So ransomware recovery process with some details. Identify patient zero computer, I already talked about that. Determine how far-reaching the infection has become. You can look and see. And any time that we've had that happen, it got about a third of the way through our network server in encrypting files. So we were able to limit it to about a third of our files instead of all of the files. So it was a little bit easier to deal with because it wasn't impacting all of the files. We have to reformat patient zero computer and any others that have a native infection on them. And then restore any and all files from backup sources. That is the key right there to being able to deal with ransomware when it hits. Restoring any and all files from backup sources. If you're like most people that go backup, what is that? I thought the system does that automatically. I thought, I have this over here. I've got this process for backup. You best make sure that your backup process works like it's supposed to, because if it doesn't, that's going to be the biggest problem you're going to deal with today. What about contacting the FBI and law enforcement? Well, that sounds good, and we've seen that on TV shows, and you'll even hear that in the news and all of that, but read closely what the FBI says. There's very little they can do after a ransomware attack is hit. Unless it's some sort of national cybersecurity threat or you're some agency that deals with those kind of files, the FBI and local law enforcement are really not going to be able to provide much help to you. So you need to take the bull by the horns and do something about this problem before it strikes you. What about just paying the ransom? It's ransomware, so paying the ransom, yeah, it's expensive and all, but man, trying to restore all those files and do all the things that you have to do to get the things back, it just seems easier just to shell out some money and make all that go away. Sure, that is the goal. That is what happened. In fact, many large companies, colleges, and even cities and municipalities today are making the choice to pay ransom. Unfortunately, there's no way to ensure that paying the ransom will actually get your files decrypted. Who are you going to tell if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do? How are you going to hold them accountable if you pay them money? Because you're basically paying them money in an untraceable format. Bitcoin is not traceable, so you can't exactly go to them and say, hey, you didn't decrypt our files. They're already doing something illegal, so there's nothing you can hold over their heads to make them do what's supposed to do. And chances are they may want to hold out for more money or do something else. And then if they hit you once, they may put something in your network to basically allow you to hit them to hit you again and up the price the next time around. So you best not pay the ransom if you've got any other way of doing that. Obviously, if you've taken steps before the infection, that will keep you from having to even consider that possibility. And as I mentioned, one of the biggest steps you can take is making sure that you backed up your files properly. Oh, okay, now I'm fearful of ransomware. What can I do about it? I see it's all around. It's hitting people that I know, and lots of people I know personally are having to deal with that problem today. There are steps you can take today. Here it is. It's real simple. Beep. I say that probably because a lot of people, maybe what they say in response to ransomware is beeped out. But in this case, BEEP makes a very simple acronym for us. Backup, educate, expect, prepare. The details. Back up your files regularly and use two systems to back up. Currently, we have a dual backup system. We back up files locally, and we also back up files in the cloud. So if for some reason our local systems are all compromised, the cloud versions of things will be fine, and we can restore from the cloud. While not ideal, it will still work. Plus, we can always go back to a step before on the local backup and restore them when they're not encrypted as they are. In some businesses, time is critical, so that is a factor when you're looking at backup solutions, because restoration takes time. It may take 1 to 2 weeks to be able to restore your files in some cases. That's why we use two processes to make that happen. Educate your staff to the risks of their behavior. You have to let people know that what they're doing when they're clicking on a link or they're downloading this or they're clicking on something on a website, they are putting not only themselves but their entire company at risk with what's happening. Bad attachments, unknown USB thumb drives, curious website activity, all of that leads to a potential ransomware attack. And the 3 I've dealt with, they all originated with innocent activity by an employee. 2 of them were very context sensitive. One of them dealt with a resume for somebody who was looking for an applicant to send them a resume for a particular job. It was a resume, but it had ransomware embedded in it. They clicked on it and ransomware spread throughout our company. Just like that. Context sensitive. Couldn't really plan for that. But you have to teach employees these 2 things. Question everything and trust no one. Wish it could be different, but it's not so. So when you're looking at something and it says it's from somebody, question whether or not that's actually true, whether it's actually from that somebody or not. And then don't trust anything, regardless of who you got it from or where you got it from. Always be wary of what you're looking at and where it came from. Expect ransomware to strike. Expect it to happen. It's all over the news because it's happening to everybody. Everybody is having to deal with this problem. And the reason why everybody's having to deal with this, most people are making a choice to pay. If everybody stopped paying the ransomware would go away because nobody would be making money off of it. And the people who do it would quit wasting their time trying to infect people with ransomware. Granted, some people probably do it for the fun of it and just to get kicks, but most people who infect your company network with ransomware are doing it for the money. And once you cut off that pipeline of money, they stop doing it. But expect that this is going to happen. Regardless of your position, you can do something now if you expect to be hit with ransomware. You need to realize that this is a reality. We practice for all sorts of different situations and scenarios. And this is another thing that you need to consider that is vitally important to the life of your company. Prepare for it like you would any other disaster. We take great pains to have fire drills or tornado drills or active shooter drills or all these other drills. Well, you've got to prepare for a ransomware attack just the same way. You know, ransomware will likely impact you or your business with almost a nearly 85% certainty. 85%. You cannot say that about any other disaster that could potentially strike your business, infect all your data like that. You can run tests, simulations, tabletop exercises, but you need to have a plan in place for when, not if, ransomware hits, because it's going to. Now you need to know, okay, what do we do? How do we go about that? Who's the point person? Who's going to handle that? Maybe you have an outside IT company. Are you going to be able to call them and get them over there and get them to handle that quickly? You're going to have somebody on site who helps coordinate that effort, because you can't just have one group of outside people making decisions with all of your company data. You've got to make that decision now. In the end analysis, you will likely not be able to prevent ransomware from striking. It's going to happen. It sounds very fatalistic to say, but it's in all likelihood going to happen. If it's going to happen, why? Because people are people. We make mistakes. We're well-natured, good-intentioned people, but you click on that link, or you open that file, or you go to that website, or you're looking for a recipe or a coupon or something else like that, and the next thing you know, ransomware strikes your computer, and then it's your entire network. Now you've got some explaining to do to your boss and their boss and everybody else in your company why nobody can access their files anymore, because they're all encrypted because of something you did. With technology continuing to develop as it is, attack vectors will as well. If this doesn't make you want to go back up your data now, I'm not sure what will. Think about your backup process. Think how often you've restored files from that backup process. Look at how often you're backing up files. Is it daily? Is it continually? Is it 1 week? Can you do without a week's worth of data? Perhaps you have a lot of things that change inside of a week. You probably need to be looking at daily continuous backups. Maybe some of your processes that you currently have in place right now need to change. Those are all things you can take a look at now before the infection hits. Once it comes, all of those things are in the rearview mirror, and you have to deal with what's ahead of you. This time I'll entertain any questions.